Start over. The City Council Committee on Ordinances, Licensing, and Legal Affairs co-host of the Committee of the Whole will meet in person Thursday, March 13th, 2025 at 6 o'clock p.m. for the purpose of granting a certain licenses, seaworms, and secondhand valuables, home rule petition relative to the compositional licensing board for the City of Salem, and home rule petition relative to increasing the local option tax in the City of Salem on the sale of marijuana and marijuana products. This meeting will be held in City Council Chambers, 93 Washington Street, Salem, Massachusetts, second floor. We have with us Mayor Pangallo, City Solicitor Beth Renard, and Anna Friedman. I guess actually we'll start out with the granting of the seaworms licenses. Secondhand valuables. So for the seaworms licenses, we have Manuel Greco. Any motions? Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Hapworth. I move that we refer to the full council with a positive recommendation. Michael Greco for seaworms and Echo ATM 11 and 450 for secondhand value.
All right, Councilor Cohen moves to be granted. Seconded by Councilor Watson-Felt. Oh, sorry. Seconded by Councilor Morcello. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Okay, we'll move on to the home rule petitions. And we can start with cannabis if you guys are ready. For cannabis, okay.
Thanks, councilors. So the proposed home rule petition here is regarding granting the City of Salem through the council the ability to increase our local excise on cannabis from 3% to 6%. And in the special act, it says that should the city do so, Salem and all of the licensed cannabis establishments in our community would then be exempted from the requirements and strictures of the host community agreements mechanisms, which are in the statute currently. So 6% is, as some of you may know, what we charge for excise on lodging right now. It is similar to the local excise on cannabis in New Jersey, the local and county excises on cannabis in Illinois. It's relatively close. Alaska has a levy of 5% local excise on cannabis. New York has a minimum of 4%. And in California, it's up to 15% as a local excise. In Massachusetts, we're capped at 3% currently for the local excise on cannabis. The Commonwealth collects 17% sales and excise tax on cannabis for comparison. No other industry outside of the gaming industry in Massachusetts is subjected to a requirement like a host community agreements mechanism. And the agreements have, after several years of changing regulations and laws, proven to be pretty ripe for confusion and unfortunately litigation. Excise taxes, on the other hand, are general fund revenues. They require no further burden on cities and towns to implement or collect. They have no uncertainty. There's no need for renegotiations with the business. It just is what it is. Salem, as many of you know, was home to the first medical marijuana dispensary to open in the Commonwealth. We were among the first to open adult use recreational cannabis. I believe that Salem has worked with thoughtfulness and fairness to advance the success of this industry. Despite this, the host community agreement mechanism has proven to be consistently flawed, no matter how it is attempted to be implemented by the state. The most recent changes in 2023 are especially problematic, and the consequences of them have been litigation or threatened litigation in communities across the state. Those kinds of hostile approaches by those businesses that have opted to use them have created really irreparable divisions between those businesses and the communities that initially welcomed them. It's resulted in a regulatory structure in which municipalities and therefore residents and our taxpayers face enormous potential financial exposure from lawsuits. So the special act here that's being proposed is similar to a proposal that I had submitted as testimony to the Cannabis Control Commission and the legislature in 2023, which would essentially end the host community agreement and community impact fee process and replace it with something far simpler and more comprehensible, an option to increase the excise instead. I think that if we had the opportunity to go back to the first deliberations around how we would bring this industry into our Commonwealth, I don't think anyone would have agreed that the present model of host community agreements, which is not something that's really replicated in any other state that has allowed this use, is what we should have in Massachusetts. It's been a huge blow to cities and towns. The Massachusetts Municipal Association has weighed in strongly against the regulations that the state ended up promulgating. It maintains a unique and complicated regulatory framework for the businesses, and it even creates more paperwork and responsibility on the Cannabis Control Commission as they have to review and approve every single host community agreement that is signed. No one benefits from this current model. I think that the home rule petition process exists to allow cities and towns to demonstrate different models and different innovations, and I believe this is one that we should propose to the legislature as a concept that's worth putting forward for other cities and towns to explore.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we get to questions, is it fair to say this is likely not going to be accepted by the State House?
I would never presume to assume anything about the great and general court and their approach to home
Were it
rule.
not accepted, would it still serve a purpose of sending a message that we're not satisfied with the way things are currently?
I think that it would do that. I think it would send a strong message to the legislature that not only are we not comfortable with the current manner in which these host agreements are being placed upon cities and towns, that we actually think there's a better model that's more fair for everybody involved.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Hapworth, through you to the mayor. Yeah, this process is totally unfair. The Cannabis Commission has been mismanaged. A lot of the costs associated with having community meetings and, cities and towns deciding, which applicants are worthy costs money. It's totally unfair that the state gets 17% and we get 3%. I'm just of the opinion that there may be some legislators out there who represent communities who agree with us, and they may grant this to us because all they're doing is granting Salem permission. They're not doing anything for any other communities except us. So I don't have a question. I'm just fully in support of this. I think it makes sense. I think this percentage is what the city assumed in the beginning because we had a 3% that was taken away by the legislature. So I just don't think that Salem and other communities that have the shops are being treated equitably.
Note for the record that Councilor Varela has recused himself for this meeting. I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Jerslow.
Thank you, Councilor Hapworth. Mayor, how many dispensaries are there in Salem? Is it 5 or 6?
5.
Are there any new ones that are applying?
No, so under our ordinances, we're actually capped at 5 recreational adult use retail establishments.
Okay. Now, are mushrooms going to be included under this? I know that's like the new thing coming out. Is that part of that?
This is only in regards to cannabis establishments that are licensed and regulated by the Cannabis Control Commission.
And how much more taxes would be, you think, an average that would be collected with this? Just an average.
Yeah. So I did bring the numbers on our cannabis excise. I think, like most, we discussed at the retreat at the start of the year, the cannabis excise is decreasing in Salem, but everywhere that has this, because the market is really saturated right now. So our cannabis excise collections in the last full fiscal year, so FY24, was just under $700,000, which is about $190,000 less than FY23. So that's at a 3% rate. So if it was $700,000 last year at 3%, and if we had the option to collect 6%, it would be double. So 1.4 million.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, and I may have missed this in the backup originally when it was first submitted, but I think my confusion is the excise on top of what they will still potentially be responsible to the state for through their own, like, how does it, so the 17 and 3 that we have now through the HCA, what happens if we decide to, if they get magically approve this and we adopt this, right, at a 6% excise, does that take, I mean, what is the state getting in that scenario?
This doesn't affect the state's sales tax or excise tax at all.
So this would be 6, this would be an additional 3 on top of what, to the business owners, what they're already paying out to the state. Well, it would be our current 3 conferred plus the new 3.
So currently, there's a 3% excise, up to 3% of a community impact fee,
Right.
and 17% to the state.
Right.
What this proposal would do would be 3% local excise, 3% additional local excise, so instead of the community impact fee, and the 17% to the state. So the total percentage assessment really doesn't change.
Okay.
We're saying remove the community impact fee model and replace it with the excise model instead.
But no additional financial burden to the business owner.
Correct. And just like with every other excise tax or sales tax that's applied, ultimately it's a cost that's passed on to the consumer. It's unless the business owner chooses to, to eat that cost and not. But in this case, these are costs that are, I think, entirely passed on to the consumer.
And I just have to say out loud, because this is not your problem, but I have moral issues with the fact that we're still treating cannabis the way we're treating cannabis, and we're not treating liquor stores in any different way than we have for 100 years. So, or, however many it's been. And so from a business owner perspective, it's just such a higher burden to run a business like this one. I agree with the regulation. I agree with the oversight. I have my own personal opinions about the cap on the number of businesses, et cetera. But I think beyond the HCA model, I feel compelled to say, I think handling cannabis the way we do, i.e. what they owe communities, is wrong on a lot of levels.
Yeah, so I'd like to respond to that just to offer, one of the justifications for the 2023 changes to the host community agreement regulations was that we have to rein in, this is the industry speaking, they have to rein in cities and towns because they're becoming owners' costs and it's affecting the ability of this industry to grow. And that's actually not true. What we saw when we allowed for this industry to come into Salem in a thoughtful way was that the barriers to this industry starting up were the upfront capital and the excessive amount of time that the Cannabis Control Commission took to grant their licenses. So if you were required to start in an industry that is brand new, lease or purchase property and hold it for 2-3 years at a time while your state licensing goes through. And the city moved very quickly to provide a path to negotiate the initial host community agreements, to do the permitting that was required, and then it would sit at the state without any clarity around why. Like that was what was adding cost to these companies. When these excises are passed along to the customer, that's not what's creating a financial barrier to somebody that, if you're a social equity applicant, want to start a new business. It's the upfront capital and it's the delay of state licensing. And so to me, the idea that we're now going to tell the Cannabis Control Commission, you're also responsible for signing off on the host agreements. When those regulations passed in 2023, there were 500 host agreements in effect across 150 cities and towns in Massachusetts. So to take those 500 agreements and say, here's one more thing that this commission has to review and approve, when they're struggling just to figure out their own governance, like that to me is where the real cost burden comes in. And then the state says, and by the way, it's 17%.
I agree with you, Mayor, and I appreciate that comment. And I just want to close my own comment by saying this is what makes the barrier to this business, to success in this business industry, inequitable and limited only to those who can afford that time and space of upfront cost and the time it takes to get through all of the policies without an income. So that's it. Thanks.
Any other questions? Any motions? Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Hapworth. I move that we approve the home rule petition with a positive recommendation to the full council.
Councilor Cohen moves to send a positive recommendation for approval to the full council. Seconded by Councilor Gerslow. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. All right, now on to the licensing board composition. City Solicitor Beth Renard.
Good evening. This home rule petition was brought forward to you through a request from the licensing board. The licensing board, by state statute, has 3 members, and it has become difficult at times due to illness or due to a conflict of interest to have a quorum, have enough people to vote when you only have 3 members. So many cities and towns have submitted home rule petitions like this to add an alternate member. A member would attend the meetings and would only act and vote when one of the members was either conflicted out or was absent. Any questions you might have?
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Hapworth. Through you to the solicitor. It's unbelievable to me that any board or commission would have 3 people. Many of our boards only meet once a month. They meet sometimes twice a month. I've seen agendas that have like 30 items on it. It's a lot of work for the actual people on the board, and I wish we could actually expand the number of people, on the board, because this creates like almost a different kind of majority than most of our boards have to make a quorum. So is there any thought, or have any communities submitted a petition to increase the number of actual members, or is it just having an alternate who can vote when someone doesn't show up?
So very few. A lot of them use the alternate method. I looked on the state's website and found several that had this model. I spoke to some members, some attorneys at Copeland and Page about this, and recommended that they've seen that this has the most success, having an alternate.
Just out of curiosity, Beth, is there a reason behind why there are typically 3 members on the licensing board?
It's something that goes back. This statute is ancient.
Goes back to when they just needed an odd number of people and they couldn't have one.
And it has 1 Republican, 1 Democrat required. That's archaic as well.
Councilor Marceau.
Thank you, Chair. Seriously, there's a political party involved in this?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty old. All right. I wanted to ask you if you are seeing more license requests. Is that part of the problem? Are you seeing a trend up in the number of license requests that you're getting?
Well, so yes, but because we have the outdoor dining now, we have more restaurants that are looking for entertainment. We have, a lot of the agenda items are things that the ABCC requires us to act on, like change of manager or a change of officers or stockholders. So those are some statutory requirements that we have as a local licensing board, so you'll see a lot of that. But those are items that go quick. So the agendas, our meetings are never more than an hour and a half, unless we have a disciplinary hearing. But generally, we move through those items really quickly. And a lot of one-day liquor licenses, see a lot of those.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I have no problem expanding it with alternates. I'm just wondering, when you say illnesses and things, is there, I don't know, is that becoming more of a problem, I guess, or people that are away, or,
You mean getting a quorum? Mm-hmm. We've had some illness. It's been a rough year.
yeah.
So that's been a problem. But everybody's on the mend, so that's a good thing.
Good to hear. All right, thanks.
Any other questions? Councilor Watson.
Thank you. This is more of a comment. I would personally be supportive of seeing a suggested additional couple of members to the licensing board as well as the alternate, or a couple of additional members of the board without an alternate. I just think that 3 even plus an alternate is still too small of a number to actually cover the bases we have, especially now that I know that there's an additional limitation being representation from each political party. So I guess the question through you to the city solicitor would be, is the legal advice to start here because this seems to be successful and then we could take it up again separately if we wanted to? Or should we actually look to really expand this body right from the off?
So based on my conversations with council for other communities, this is the recommended action at this time. It's difficult to get folks to commit to a licensing board type of a board. There's a lot that goes into it, a lot of study that needs to happen. You need to understand the liquor licenses and the common victual licenses, and it's a real commitment. And people aren't knocking our door down to be on the licensing board, so.
If there are no other questions, I'll take a motion. Councilor Morsillo.
Thank you, President. I move to refer this to the council with a positive recommendation for approval.
Councilor Morsillo moves to refer to the council with a positive recommendation for approval, seconded by Councilor Cohen. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Mayor and Anna. Anything else? Any other motions? Councilor Morsillo.
Motion to adjourn.
Councilor Morsillo moves to adjourn. All those in favor? Any opposed? Adjourn.